Hi guys, welcome to my first podcast. My name is Eun Hui, so today's task is to interview a manager and learn from him. I'm honored to invite a data and analytic manager who are currently work at Cloud Company at Singapore. For the first question, I wanted to know my manager, what is his personal trait that he believed to become a good manager?
Well, individual contributor, you will tend to be doing more linear stuff. Like you lead a much bigger, more specialized project that's very difficult, challenging.
As a manager, our role is not to help the team become better in a linear way. For example, we can simply give some advices and suggestions rather than trying to just simply taking up more quantity in a linear manner.
Then in order to achieve this, to me, one of the biggest value I've seen so far is empathy, like in terms of understanding people and things like that.
Obviously, in his opinion, empathy is the biggest value to understand the employee and build the connection with the teams. So the second question, what is the behavior that positively impact your company to success?
I would say it's always a balance, like not over on one side than the other, because ultimately what we wanted the empathy or the business is for long run.
So, in his opinion, a leader high in concern for people or a leader high in concern for tasks is both important. Empathy is important, but if you over it will affect the operation of company. Otherwise, concern in tasks will burn the people out and doing the task without their growth, so they might leave.
Right, just like I was talking about understanding the people. At the other side, you also need to start understanding the business, helping them to define what is the right priority, what's important, what should we reduce, so that you can achieve a balance on both sides.
So for the third question, I have asked my manager what is his leadership style, and I wonder he to describe day-to-day manage in his company.
In general, I'm not a very top-down person. I much more prefer to set the direction and empower my team. So more like I want them to be able to tell me what do they think is important to do today, this week. And then, of course, I will provide my feedback, or sometimes when they have challenge with the work, they will come to me for advisory, for like feedback or review on some of their work. But in general, I don't like to micromanage people. I don't like to just like giving tasks, but more like empowering them in terms of like giving them the full ownership of certain topics.
Based on my analysis, I thought that my manager have observed members of the group are working well on their own and allow them freedom of action, but also help them if needed, which is the laser field style.
Because we are more in like an analytic function, so sometimes we don't have like a hard KPI that can be translated into a number like sales or like users, buyer kind of things. But usually to me, as much as possible, there will definitely be like a more high level goal, which is a bit like what is the purpose of a team? What do we want us to be 1, 2 years, 3 years, or not necessarily in the same company, but can in your career, like what do you wanted to achieve down the road? Then that, as much as possible, we're trying to make it as our principle to set goal for the team. Why do we need to prioritize this and not that? Because this better align with our current business objective. This could be something more scalable, can be used by more people, which ultimately with that, we hope it will help to make better business decisions and end up with a better result. It's really about understanding where each other is coming from. And then if you are a leader or an expert on certain area, you will be the one expected to make the decision based on good and bad or pros and cons you collected or understand from the conversation and processes. Then things have to move on. I mean, it don't always satisfy everyone, but usually, if you work with the right bunch of people, if you are able to establish the consensus, the common understanding, people accept that sometimes not all they wanted we can deliver, but it's a lot more about what is better for all of us as a team or as a function or as a company.
I think he also relevant with the transformation leadership, which is high motivation, appeals to higher ideas and value of follower, and create feeling of justice, loyalty, and trust.
And I also think that my manager related with the servant leadership, which is the humanistic, to earn the people trust and the respect.
I think it's also important to address that not all conflict must be resolved in a way that everyone is happy. It's more like a lot of time with conflict of interest, you just have to make the decisions based on, of course, against the open opinions or understandings from each other, or what do they have to say or what do they have on the table. Then based on the circumstances, are we trying to achieve as a team, make a decision that might not necessarily make everyone happy, but sometimes things just have to get done. Yeah.
And the next question, I wanted to know, how do you think your behavior and your personal trait influence the motivation and satisfy your employees?
I would say I've tried my best to really understand them, who they are as a person, what do they aspire to, what are they interested in, and then I also try to build the transparency, a very transparent and trust relationship between me and the team member under me.
In his point of view, he thinks that transparency is the most important to influence the company become the better, to understand the opinion and trust between the team member and him as a manager. And the second one is open to conversation and listening.
So that from those, we can have a much more open conversation, not just me providing them feedback on what I believe they can do better, but also them providing me that what do they want more from me as a manager. It's really about building the understanding. So I think first of all, the most important part from what I'm saying could be like self-awareness, meaning that you are conscious when you get defensive. You are aware that you let your emotion bias started to come in, because without that you might be in a like bias stage, and then you didn't note it, and then if you don't note it, you will never be able to have open conversations and listen what other people have to say.
As a manager, you are not just providing the feedback to the employee, whereas it's the what they want more in the company. So you must use to open conversation and listen to the employee and a team feedback.
So I think it's a very ongoing process. But I think ultimately, if you hire the right persons, everyone knows shit need to get done, and sometimes things will be difficult and challenging. But usually, if you have formed the right culture environment, it's much easier to work on the difficult things together as a team.
We also think that the cultural environment is an important part. Although sometimes things will be difficult and challenging, it is much easier to work on the difficult things as a team if the cultural environment is a better way.
So for the last question, I wanted to know, what is his thinking about a leader is born or mad? Do you believe that leaders are born with certain traits, or do you think effectively leadership can be developed through the experience and learning?
I believe leadership is learned, not born. Of course, there are certain people with certain personality who will have an easier starting point as a leader or as a manager. But I generally believe leadership is something that need to be trained. I mean, that can be trained, and not that it has to be regularly practiced, self-reflected, and keep learning. Because I don't think there will ever be a stage where you reach a highest level of leadership or something.
The manager believes leader is learned more than born. He believes leader need to be trained. As in our life, we keep trying and learning to become a better person.
And then throughout the process, you started to form your own principle. What are the things? Started to form a better understanding of how do you better lead as a leader. I'm not saying I'm a great leader or manager today, but I'm definitely a better manager than I was 1 year ago, which was better than I was 2 years ago.
I have the same opinion with the manager. From my perspective, I personally think that having innate personality and characteristic is the needed basic for your success. But if you don't work hard and learning, you will not be able to succeed at the long term.
Here is the manager LinkedIn profile. Again, I'm very grateful to him for accepting my interview.
Based on this lesson, I have learned more and more in managing a company in details, as there is not a simple task for a manager. The personal trait and behavior of a manager play an important role in determining their effectiveness as a leader. Ultimately, developing this personal trait and behavior is essential for aspiring and current manager to excel in their roles, to lead their team effectively and contribute to overall organization success. So this is the end of today's podcast. Thank you for listening.